2 million settings, and only a heartbeat to solve them. It wasn't just a secret, it was a digital executioner. How did the Third Reich's most advanced cryptographic fortress, a 12-wheeled beast used for Hitler's personal commands, manage to collapse because of a man who built telephones? Why did a system of unbreakable mathematics surrender to a monster made of glass and heat? And why were the people meant to be safe, the very ones left in the dark? But that was only the surface. History got it wrong. The only warning came from a teenage girl the generals laughed at. They ignored her because she was just a secretary, her ink-stained fingers no match for their polished metals. Why did the powerful system ignore the only tactic that could save them? The answer wasn't in the classified vaults, but in the hands of the underdog. The January 14th, 1944, Bletchley Park. The air in Buckinghamshire is a cold, damp shroud. It smells of wet earth, coal smoke, and the unspoken tension of a war that has reached its most desperate pivot. Inside the Victorian estate, there is a hierarchy of minds. At the top, the mathematicians, the brilliant, eccentric men of letters, who believe the war can be won with a pencil and a slide rule. But in Block H, a different kind of war is brewing. For years, the world has focused on the Enigma machine. It was a formidable puzzle, yes, but by 1944, it was a puzzle the Allies had learned to live with. But then, the airwaves changed. A new sound began to haunt the radio operators. A heavy, rhythmic pulse that sounded less like Morse code and more like a mechanical heartbeat. They called it tunny. This wasn't the Enigma. This was the Lorenz SZ-42. If the Enigma was a lock, the Lorenz was a bank vault buried at the bottom of the ocean. It was a massive, clunking beast of 12 wheels and nearly 2 million possible settings. It didn't just scramble a message, it buried it under layers of shifting logic. To understand the Lorenz is to understand the fatal flaw of the human brain. The machine used 2 sets of wheels to generate a key, a sequence of random pulses that were added to the original message. To a human decoder, it looked like static, absolute meaningless noise. It was a black box of mechanical spite. You fed it a sentence, and it spat out a ghost. The military establishment looked at the Lorenz and saw an impossible wall. The generals and the high-ranking code breakers at Bletchley were men of tradition. They believed in the manual. They believed that if a problem couldn't be solved by a human mind in a quiet room, it couldn't be solved at all. The mathematics are too vast, they whispered in the hallways. It would take 1,000 men 1,000 years to find the pattern. Enter Tommy Flowers. He is an outsider in every sense of the word. He doesn't have a Cambridge degree. He isn't a master of the classics. He is an engineer for the General Post Office. He spends his days thinking about telephone exchanges and vacuum tubes. The glowing, fragile glass bulbs that the experts that claim are too unreliable for serious work. Flowers walks into the mahogany-lined office of the Bletchley Directorate. He is carrying a roll of blueprints, a vision of a machine that doesn't use rotors or gears, but light. I can build a machine that reads the pulses, Flowers says. His voice is calm, steady, and lacks the polished arrogance of the men across the desk. Not with wheels, but with valves, thousands of them, we can make the machine think at the speed of electricity. The brigadier behind the desk doesn't even bother to look at the drawings. He adjusts his spectacles, the the glass reflecting the dim winter light. "Mr. Flowers," the brigadier says, his tone dripping with a cold, practiced condescension. "Valves are for radios. They burn out. They are temperamental. You are suggesting we build a, what did you call it, a Colossus out of glass? We are at war, man. We don't have time for science fiction. Stick to fixin' the phone lines." This is the crystallized arrogance of the system. They prioritize the reliable failure of the past over the unproven salvation of the future. They would rather lose the war by the book than win it with a revolutionary idea. But while the generals scoff, the machine of death is already turning. Every hour that the Lorenz remains unbroken, Hitler's orders are moving across Europe like invisible lightning. Troop movements, supply lines, the secrets of the Atlantic Wall. The Allies are blind, and in the darkness the hammer is being raised. While the system screams in panic, Flowers is already in the dark, working in a shed at Dallas Hill. He is spending his own money, using his own time. He isn't building a machine for the generals anymore. He is building it for the truth. But he isn't alone. In the barracks of Bletchley, a bus arrives. Out step the WRNS members of the Women's Royal Naval Service. They are teenagers, 18, 19 years old. To the military hierarchy, they are support staff. They are meant to file papers, make tea, and stay out of the way. One of them, a girl with sharp eyes and calloused fingers from her father's farm, looks at the looming silhouette of Block H. She has been told she is an operator. She doesn't know yet that she will have to tame a monster made of 2,000 glowing vacuum tubes. She doesn't know that if a single one of those tubes flickers, the invasion of Europe might fail. The establishment sees them as just girls. The system sees Flowers as just a technician. But the Lorenz doesn't care about rank. It doesn't care about gender. It only cares about logic. And the logic of the old world is about to be shattered by the heat of the new. The military command scoffed at the quiet reports from the radio rooms, believing the tunny signals were just technical errors or low-level chatter. They treated the silence of the German high command as a sign of their own dominance. But they had fatally underestimated their opponent. It wasn't silence, it was a digital shroud. While the generals toasted to their secure plans, the Lorenz was already preparing to guide a steel fist into the heart of the Allied D-Day preparations. The Would the Impossible key machine was about to deliver a lesson in humility, and the only ones who could hear the warning were the ones the generals had already forgotten. The glass is being blown. The wires are being stripped. The fire is coming. Swinders in 1944. The countdown to the end of the world has begun. In 5 days, the horizon of Normandy will disappear behind the largest armada in human history. But today there is only a suffocating electric dread. Inside Block H, the air is not the cold, damp Buckinghamshire mist. It is thick. It is heavy with the scent of hot oil, scorched dust, and the sharp metallic tang of ozone. It is 90 degrees in this room, even with the windows thrown open to the indifferent English rain. This is the womb of the future, and it is screaming. Before you stands a monster of steel and glass. 2,500 vacuum tubes valves, as the girls call them, glow with a sickly, hypnotic orange light. They hum with a low-frequency vibration that you don't just hear, you feel it in your teeth. This is Colossus. the world's first programmable digital electronic computer. It is a cathedral of light bulbs, 10 feet tall and 15 feet wide, and it is the only thing standing between the Allied fleet and a German slaughter. The military brass outside these walls is in a state of high-octane panic. They are looking at maps, counting tanks, and praying the weather holds. They treat the war like a game of chess played in the dark. But inside Block H, the SPI support staff is playing a different game. They are the WRNS. Most of them are 19 years old. A few weeks ago, they were finishing school or working in their father's shops. Now, they are the nervous system of this machine. They don't just operate Colossus, they inhabit it. Look at Margaret. She is 19, her hair tied back in a utilitarian knot, her fingers stained with the dark grease of the paper tape pulleys. She is standing before the bedstead, the massive frame that pulls a loop of paper tape through a photoelectric reader at 30 miles per hour. The tape is a blur. If it snaps, it becomes a razor capable of slicing through skin in a heartbeat. If it slips, the logic dies. The Lorenz machine, the Nazi monster, uses a double key system. Imagine a lock that requires 2 different keys to turn simultaneously, but the keys change their teeth every millisecond. Colossus doesn't try to find the keys. It uses the speed of light to try every possible lock in the universe at once. It performs 5,000 calculations every second. It is a sieve, catching the gold of truth while the sand of Nazi deception falls away. While the generals in London scream into their telephones about troop locations, Margaret is quiet. She's watching the valves. If one of those 2,000 bulbs flickers out, the logic gate collapses. The black box of the German signal remains closed. The technical failure is simple. Heat. The valves are fragile. They are designed for radios, not for a machine that never sleeps. If the power is cut, the cooling metal cracks. If the heat rises too high, the circuits melt. It is a machine that is constantly trying to consume itself. A shadow falls across the floor. It is a colonel from the Royal Corps of Signals. He is a man of leather boots and rigid protocols. He looks at the glowing wall of glass, and then he looks at Margaret. He sees a girl in a blue uniform. He does not see a pioneer. "It's just a glorified counting machine, isn't it?" the colonel asks, his voice carrying the weight of a man who believes only in what he can touch. Why are we trusting the invasion to a collection of light bulbs and schoolgirls? We should be focusing on the human intelligence, on the spies. Margaret doesn't look up from the tape. She knows the colonel's manual says that intelligence is gathered by men in overcoats. She knows the establishment believes that data is a secondary concern to guts. "Sir," she says, her voice steady against the roar of the machine, "the spies can tell you what Hitler said yesterday. This machine tells you what he is thinking right now." The colonel scoffed at the glowing racks, believing the electronic brain was a fragile toy that would break under the pressure of a real battle. He treated the girl's work as a clerical curiosity, but he had fatally underestimated the speed of the coming storm. It wasn't a toy. It was a god. While the colonel worried about his leather-bound reports, the Lorenz operators in Berlin were making a single microscopic mistake, a repeated phrase at the start of a message. And that mistake was about to be fed into the fire of Colossus. The invincible German cipher wasn't being broken by a spy. It was being unzipped by a teenage girl who knew how to listen to the heat. The hubris of the Third Reich is their absolute faith in the machine. They believe that because the math is perfect, the secret is eternal. They are wrong. They forgot about the ghost in the machine. Margaret remembers her background. Before the war, she was a weaver in a textile mill. She spent her days watching the looms, looking for the one broken thread that would ruin the entire cloth. The experts at Bletchley see the Lorenz as a wall of numbers. Margaret sees it as a tapestry. She sees the stutter in the German operator's hand. She sees the pattern of the wheels not as a formula, but as a rhythm. "There," she whispers. She reaches out and shifts a plug on the massive switchboard. The eureka moment isn't a shout. It's a change in the machine's song. The rapid-fire clicking of the relays slows down. It settles into a steady, purposeful beat. The machine has found the chai wheels. The first lock has turned. Behind her, Tommy Flowers is standing in the shadows. He hasn't slept in 3 days. His eyes are bloodshot. His suit is wrinkled. He is watching his unreliable valves hold the line. He isn't looking at the machine. He is looking at Margaret. He knows that he built the body, but she is the mind. Outside, the rain has turned into a downpour. In the English Channel, the ships are beginning to pull at their anchors. Thousands of men are checking their rifles, unaware that their lives are currently being weighed by a 19-year-old girl and a wall of hot glass. If Colossus fails now, if a single wire crosses or a single valve shatters, the panzer divisions waiting in the forests of France will stay hidden. The trap will be set. The beaches will become a slaughterhouse. But the machine hums on. It is a beautiful, terrifying predator of information. The German High Command is sending a message directly from the Reich Chancellery. It contains the exact location of the 21st Panzer Division. They believe the message is a ghost. They believe it is invisible. But in Block H, the tape is spinning. The valves are glowing. And the schoolgirls are reading Hitler's mail before it even reaches his generals. The system is failing, not the digital one, but the human one. The establishment still thinks the war is won with bayonets. They don't realize the world has already moved into the age of the electron. And the girls who are leading the way are the ones who will never be allowed to speak of it. The heat is rising. The tension is a physical cord stretched across the room. August 15th, 1945. The streets of London are a riot of red, white, and blue. The air is thick with the sound of cheering, the smell of cheap beer, and the sudden, overwhelming relief of a world that has finally stopped bleeding. VJ Day. The war is over. But in Block H, there are no streamers. There is no champagne. There is only the sound of heavy metal meeting glass. Margaret stands in the center of the room. The heat is gone. The 2,500 valves that once pulsed with the secret thoughts of the Third Reich are dark. They look like dead eyes. A group of men in overalls, overseen by a silent officer from the Ministry of Defense, are moving through the room with hammers and crowbars. They aren't technicians. They are janitors of secrets. The order came directly from Winston Churchill. It was a single sentence that acted as a death warrant for the future. The machines must be broken into pieces no larger than a man's hand. The technical logic is a cold, calculated betrayal. The High Command realized that while the war was won, a new one was beginning with the Soviets. They didn't want the world to know that a machine could unzip a cipher. To protect the secret of the black box, they had to murder the box itself. It was the ultimate fatal flaw of the establishment, believing that a secret is more valuable than the minds that discovered it. Margaret watches as a man swings a sledgehammer into the bedstead. The paper tape pulleys the one she had balanced with the precision of a watchmaker shatter like brittle bone. "Careful with those," she whispers, her voice lost in the crash of the wrecking crew. The officer turns to her. He is holding a stack of papers. The blueprints Tommy Flowers drew in the damp shed at Dallas Hill. He doesn't look at them. He drops them into a galvanized steel bin where a small fire is already licking at the edges of the digital age. "Go home, miss," the officer says. His voice is not unkind, but it is final. "You did your bit. Now you must forget everything you saw here. If you speak of this, even to your parents, it is treason." This is the crystallized arrogance of the system. They believe they can order a human mind to delete its own brilliance. They believe that by smashing the glass, they can erase the truth. The WRNS, the teenage girls who mastered the world's first computer, are marched out of the gate. They are given no medals for Colossus, no public thanks. They are handed a standard discharge paper and a bus ticket. The system treats them like used components, a valve that is burned out and is no longer needed. Margaret returns to her village. She takes a job as a secretary in a local law firm. She spends her days typing letters about property disputes and marriage licenses. The men she works for, men who spent the war in comfortable offices, speak to her slowly, as if she might struggle with the complexity of a typewriter. They have no idea that she once held the heartbeat of the Nazi high command in her hands. The irony is a bitter poison. For 30 years, the official history books will claim that the electronic computer was born in America in a lab called ENIAC in 1946. The world will celebrate the fathers of the digital age, while the mothers of the revolution are forbidden from even mentioning the word Colossus to their own children. Tommy Flowers returns to the post office. He asks for a loan to continue his research into electronic switching. The bank rejects him. The establishment claims his ideas are unproven. He spends the rest of his life in obscurity, never receiving a penny for the machine that shortened the war by at least 2 years and saved millions of lives. He dies before the secret is finally declassified. We see this same hubris in our society today. We trust the system, the algorithms, the massive corporations, the official narratives, and we ignore the quiet voices in the basement. We forget that the most powerful revolutions don't always come from the boardroom. They come from the outsider with a soldering iron and the girl who knows how to listen to the silence. The story of Colossus isn't a story of technology. It is a story of the invisible wall. It is a reminder that the greatest tragedy isn't the destruction of a machine. It is the silencing of the human spirit that built it. The glass was smashed, the blueprints were burned, but the logic survived. It lives in every screen you touch, every code you send. You are holding the legacy of Margaret and Tommy Flowers in your hand right now. If you believe that stories like Margaret's deserve to be remembered, join our ranks by subscribing. Help us ensure that the hands that built the future are never forgotten again. We have synthesized this narrative from reputable historical archives and verified sources. However, the fog of war often extends to the history books. If you spot any inaccuracies or have additional details to share, please correct us in the comments. We strive for the absolute truth, and your knowledge helps us get there. Thank you for keeping history alive.